in it. So I'm
Very
trying to
good.
understand.
So we're going somewhere.
Okay,
We're
good.
going somewhere. So
Okay.
we've talked about what we call separation. Now, after you separate, the next thing is that you're going to apply more heat because you're now trying to start the process of conversion. So you're converting something that you've taken from a semi-crude state and you want to now refine it, or let me use the word blend it. Aha, we're getting somewhere now. You need to blend it to take out impurities, take out things like high sulfur,
Okay.
take out things like, let's even say particles. I'm going to be as rudimentary as I need to be.
Okay.
So in that process, what you've done is that you've done a conversion, and then you have hydrocarbons. But those hydrocarbons are not what is going to go to the retail station. And why wouldn't they do that? Because they have a high amount of sulfur in it. There are environmental issues attached with what those things are as they have come out.
Okay.
So now you start to blend it and treat it. In blending, you're taking two mixes. So let's use a cup of coffee. I want my coffee very strong. I love coffee. But it means that if I give it to someone else and my wife decides that I don't like this coffee, it's too strong, what is she going to do? It's one of two options. If we've got too much coffee, then she just makes another cup. If we haven't got too much, then what she's going to do is pour that coffee into a
water,
larger cup
yeah.
and then introduce water. She's blended that coffee. If there's too much sugar in it as well, the water will do two things. It will reduce the effect or potency of the coffee and then also reduce the effect of the sugar. That said, when you go into a refinery, by the time you finish that, you need to treat whatever has come out. So the Port Harcourt refinery as it is says that we're up and running. And we have gotten to the stage where we have straight cut naphtha. Assume that naphtha is a step to petrol. So what you will do with naphtha is that you're going to blend it because you're trying to get petrol that is available to go to the retail outlet. In blending it, and this is where I think there was a differential. They mentioned the petrochemical plant that is next to the Port Harcourt refinery, Indorama. Indorama is a petrochemical blending plant. So they make chemicals.
Out of crude.
No, they make chemicals. So let me say crude could be an input. Hydrocarbons could be an input. So they could make it out of different things.
Okay.
Look at it this way. A lubricant blending plant would only blend to give us motor oils. But it's not using crude. It's using one of the outputs of crude, which is base oils. So it's a mixture of base oils and additives that are blended into motor oils. Now, that's a blending unit that is done in a blending plant. So they've been referring to something called C5 unit. So the C5 unit is where they mix or where they blend the straight cut naphtha with, let me say, petrol to be able to get the blend and the quality that needs to go to the retail outlet. So this is what the NNPC has told us up to this point.
Let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
The blending facility is responsible for this particular aspect of your conversation, the blending of naphtha and petrol,
yes.
Or the NNPC.
No, so what it is that from what we've read and from what they've told us.
So if it's that close, okay. But
because, I mean, technically, they have to feed it into the petrochemicals, Endurama, one way or the other.
Okay.
They could do that by pipes. They could decide to do that by trucks. I really don't know. But I'll go back to the example of the lubricant. So every time a lubricant kettle, that's like a big bowl of oil, you're trying to make different lubricants. And why are you making different lubricants? Because one thing about lubricants is that they're supposed to reduce friction between metals. Yes? So in our engines, piston, rings, those are all metal. And if they continue to rub around without any form of lubrication, they get hot. Heat emits. So when you blend lubricants, you're trying to get the best quality. So if you look at the lubricant container, you might see something like 20W50. You might see 0W20. Those numbers just mean that at a certain temperature, if it is 20 degrees or if it is 50 degrees, the lubricant stays viscous and continues to flow. It doesn't boil over and it doesn't freeze. So that's because of the additives. What am I trying to say? To get those best lubricants, you have to blend. So blending in itself in a refinery is a process that happens inside or outside the refinery. In the case of NNPC Port Harcourt, that blend part seems to be happening outside at the Indorama petrochemical just next to it. I think that gives us some context.
Doesn't quite almost straightforwardly answer is a Port Harcourt refinery. So you have said it's refining.
It is working. That's the point. Now, is it completing the process? In my opinion, I don't think so. Because if you have to take out the straight cut naphtha, and let's say you even pipe it to the Indorama petrochemicals, because they have what you call a C5 unit, then it means that you're completing your process outside the refinery. Now, whether you do that or not, the question is that whatever is blended in the end is going to come back into your tanks.
Okay.
So you're going to load out of Port Harcourt refinery tanks. So the question is that when you finish the blending, does it meet test standards? Does it meet the requirements? Then I haven't seen any what you may call a certificate of quality out of the refinery. I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're selling, and I'm assuming that people loading must at least have drawn a sample. Because normally if you go and buy something from somewhere, you take a sample, you test it at your lab and decide that, okay, it meets the standards. The sulfur content is okay, the specific gravity is okay. I'm assuming people have done that for them to be loading.
Okay. So as of today, we speak, the NNPC is loading trucks with petrol. So is that happening? I
don't think so.
Okay.
As at today, as at yesterday, I thought it was. But I read an article where someone was talking about the fact that they were shut down. I believe it was the Punch newspapers. I don't know. Who visited and said there was no activity going on.
Good.
So if they said there was no activity, they said they spoke to people on conditions of anonymity.
Yeah.
And some of them said that they were calibrating and that this process will continue for a week. Now, what is a calibration process? It's just to try and confirm how much volume is coming out from my meters, and I'm trying to measure it.
Shouldn't that have been done before?
Brilliant, Joyce. In my opinion, every time that I decide that I'm going to launch this house, I just think for the sake of good order, it makes sense to paint it before I announce I'm launching it. I do not believe that's what the NNPC did. I believe with that refinery, they went ahead and commissioned,
live stream, told us
invited
that
everybody. And then you now said you are calibrating. The calibration should have been, because before you ramp up a refinery, it's a process. You don't just start it and, I was assuming that with all the delays, that should have been done. I do not think that was done if the story of the calibration is correct. Then what it is that they started the refinery, found out they were over or under supplying, and now decided, okay,
or maybe not even supplying, because it's so convoluted. One is, it's as though you really have to leave your mind open because anything can give. Okay, so here is the other part of this concern. So they put up a show, and I remember announcing to the public, oh, the NNPC is live streaming. If you're interested, you can go to their Twitter page. You can watch. And they're announcing trucking begins 1:40. I was telling Lagos. And somewhere in all of that, my mind just makes a swift travel to Nigeria Air. And I said, I just hope this is not another Nigeria Air. Okay, so I have a theory. And it's an assumption, but I think it's an educated one. Is it possible that the NNPC hurriedly launched the Port Harcourt refinery in order to give Dangote a chase for his monopoly? Because you think about it, it's been moribund. Practically, Nigerians have bled over, give us refineries.
Correct.
We have crude. Why are you exporting, importing? It seems as though the emergence of a Dangote has not just changed narratives, but has also changed the script, so that suddenly Dangote lunches, they don't even allow him determine what price should be, and then they tell us Port Harcourt refinery is up and running. This same Port Harcourt refinery that the entire Nigerian public have been I think we've held there's nothing the Nigerian public hasn't done in order to draw the attention of the government to the potential of a locally established refinery. And they have turned deaf ears until Dangote emerged. So I'm thinking this is more a show than it is an actual refinery in operation.
You could be right in terms of a show, but in my opinion, it's not a competition game. The NMDPRA feels that Nigeria uses about 50 million liters of petrol a day. If you look at the calculations from what the Port Harcourt refinery had published, if they're doing 1.4 million liters a day of PMS, that's barely 2.5% of what the nation needs.
That
so
is
it's
the
not
capacity.
A competition.
That's the capacity, but that's not what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm even saying that if they're doing the capacity,
Okay.
it's just 2.6 or 2.7%. So it's not a competition play. It might be a case of trying to save face. We've missed this milestone 6 or 7 times. Okay. The Nigerian citizenry is gullible. No disrespect to us.
It's all right. We can take it. We've taken worse.
So let's take it that. Let's put on a show. At least they see it's up and running. Then we can come back and say something else is wrong. But that's not the point for me. Now, the point is this. Who monitors the monitor? So if the NNPC decides they can do this, then who regulates them? The NMDPRA? But for me, they're peas in a pod. So it means that there's nobody higher authority, quote and unquote, that holds them accountable. You don't say 1.5 billion has been spent and then you start this thing and run it for 4 days and decide that, look, we're calibrating. It's the effrontery for me. What it means is that we can do this, and like Nigeria, it's business as usual. Nothing is going to happen.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a show, and you find out they're coming out with statements. You really don't need so many statements if your work is going on according to plan. All you do at the end of every year is just show us your public account. I will say, yes, bang on. What they've done is that this is the revenue, this is the profit. They've done well. Everybody claps and goes home. It's really as simple as that.
Yeah. Except that it's only as simple as that in our imaginations. From what we see televised and reported, it's so complex. We don't even know what to cling to. We don't know what to believe. And yes, you have asked a very fundamental question. Who's observing the observer and charging them with accountability? That doesn't appear to be anything in the conversation. So I guess we are here and we take what they give us, including price. So it's reported that the refinery is selling at 1,030 naira.
So when the refinery started, there's an NNPC portal which marketers have access to. They started at 1046. They dropped that down to 1029. And as at this morning, they are 1020, which is 1020. So it's important to note that while they do that, there's a market of people who already had cargoes in Port Harcourt. I mean, marketers had already brought in cargoes, even if they had bought as PFIs from the NNPC. So what the NNPC will be trying to do is trying to get into the market and find what their best price point is. The longer they're able to refine and continue, then they can penetrate the market. So think about it this way. 1.4 million liters every day for 10 days is 14 million. If they brought in a 15 million vessel or refined 15 million liters, what it means is that they can feed that area called Port Harcourt and actually dictate the price. So you notice they're coming down because if you set a price that is above the market when you enter, the chances are that you're just going to hold on to your stock and you won't be able to sell it. So you also now found out they started feeding some of the NNPC retail outlets, because it makes sense. If I have a product and I want to push it, let me push it through my outlet. I'm competing against myself. But to now go a step further, let marketers come and buy from me, then I need to keep on dropping those prices to a level where I've penetrated the market, add my freight cost, and I still have a tidy return. So as at this morning on the NNPC portal, for Port Harcourt, it was 1020. Calabar was 1025.
Okay. Now, that would be a better option. I want to talk about price in a moment. I still want to linger there, but I'm saying, just by way of a lateral deviation, that cost or that price will be better in comparison to buying from a Dangote refinery here in Lagos and transporting to the east.
Probably not. So look at it this way. If I bought from the Dangote refinery today with 970 naira per liter, local transportation around Lagos is 10 naira per liter. So it meant that if it was going, and I'm just going to hazard a guess. So let me say 13 naira. On a liter, if you take it that way. If I took it to Port Harcourt.
Okay.
So 13 naira, 970, that's 1,000. Don't forget that when I sell at the retail outlet, there's what you call a dealer commission. So if the dealer, the person who runs the outlet, who has invested in brick and mortar, puts another 10 naira yeah, then what it is that we have gotten to 10.10. So if there are any other taxes or anything, maybe another 5 naira. So it's not far off in terms of comparison.
Okay.
But what would I consider if I was buying product and I had a retail outlet in Port Harcourt? Why am I putting my truck on the road from Ekpe and traveling, 9 hours by road to come to Port Harcourt to sell? If the refinery is able to give me at that price point, so that means that what I have to consider, it's not that much of a difference. So I'd go ahead and buy from Port Harcourt.
Okay.
Now, if I was buying volumes that I thought the refinery in Port Harcourt can't give me, so let's say I want 15 million liters today, then what I would do is very, very simply go and sit down with the Dangote refinery. What discount can you give me on this 970?
Yeah.
Get a vessel, go load coastally, and then freight that cargo by 2-3 days to Port Harcourt. Just put it in my storage tank and distribute from there.
Okay. Now, I don't know why I feel that this... You sent me a calculation. For some reason, I think that the price should be lower. But maybe I'm just a civilian with not much of mathematical comprehension as to how the pricing works. Okay. But I feel like if you're taking crude within Nigeria and you're refining locally, then we shouldn't be talking anything around 1,000. That is my judgment. Okay. But I don't know if it's really the mathematics of it or if it's the politics of it that's insisting that the price stay around that 970, 1,000, like all the other beneficial aspects, like people who want to gain from this whole industry are the ones forcing Nigerians to pay about 1,000 naira a liter. I feel if it's locally obtained and that's crude, the price should be lower.
You make a good point, but let's put it in perspective. How do we price that commodity called crude? We've never priced it in naira. There are options to pay in naira.
Yeah.
Which means that you're going to convert from a US dollar pricing because crude in itself is commercially priced.
Then it's disadvantage. It doesn't benefit the Nigerian public. It's highly disadvantageous to us because I understand that the country needs to make money.
Correct.
And so you price it in the dollar.
Correct.
I think if you're selling to the international market, you're selling at the international market rate. If you're selling to Nigerians, it is ludicrous to give it to us at a dollar rate and an economy you're not building.
Good. Two things need to happen. If I was selling crude oil as a Nigerian entity abroad, I would sell it at open market selling price plus X. So open market selling price, if I decide plus 2, would mean that if crude oil international benchmark is 77.6 and I add a premium of 2, then what it means is that I'm selling at 77.6 plus 2. That's how much we earn as revenue federation account.
Yeah.
The question is this: does the federal government want to discount local crude? Now that's another case. So it means that instead of open market selling price plus, I discount crude and say if it is 77.26, then I'm going to discount it by $10 per barrel, which means I've moved it from 77.26 to 67.26.
For local purposes.
For local purposes. But don't forget, they're going to pay me in naira. Every time I speak on this show, I always say something. The exchange rate is the greatest killer because the fiscal and monetary policies are wrong. So imagine that 66.76 and we're multiplying by an exchange rate of 800 naira. Automatically, it solves all these problems we're talking about because that drops those prices to about 600 or 700 naira per liter. There's no rocket science to this. But because you're having to convert that. So
more news and information coming up. We'll be back in a moment.
Salon Pass Pain Relief Patch provides effective relief for stubborn pain such as back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, and leg pain. Salon Pass is distributed by Drugstock and available in pharmacies and stores near you. Try Salon Pass today. Salon Pass, just patch it. If symptoms persist after 3 days, please consult your doctor.
Are you looking for where you can get first-hand information about studying Ireland? Come and explore the Lagos Studying Ireland Fair. Whether you're considering an undergraduate or postgraduate courses, this fair is the perfect place to meet representatives from top Irish universities and colleges, gather information, and ask any questions you may have. Discover the wide range of study options available in Ireland and learn about the academic programs, scholarships, and application process. Date Saturday, 7th December 2024. Time 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Venue The Marriott Hotel, 122 Joe Ogunaike Street, Ikeja, GRA, Lagos. For more information, call +234 906 161 3972 +234 811 492 1547 +353 892 313 934. Admissions is free, so mark your calendars and get ready for a fantastic day of discovery and networking. Powered by Michael Educational Consult Limited.
Success is like an aeroplane. You only see the graceful flight high up in the sky, but not the roaring, powerful engines propelling it. Likewise, in the world of e-payments, you only see transactions done, funds remitted. But who pioneered these financial technology solutions? Well, you knew it as Value Card, now Unified Payments, Nigeria's premier financial technology service provider. Yes, it starts here. Find out more at www.up-ng.com. Unified Payments, innovations that work for you.
99.3 Nigeria Info, your number one station for talk. Let's talk.
Oh, I want to quickly apologize. My concentration on the conversation practically distracted me. But yeah, Jide Pratt. And he was trying to make a case. You on the thought. Can we just really finish that?
Okay. So where did I stop before this? The thought offline?
No. On air, and then the offline on the other side of the hour.
Okay, so I'm trying to get my line of thought of where we stopped.
Okay, where did we stop? You were talking about the pricing in dollar.
Very good. So what we said is that if we discounted it, then what it meant is that if the exchange rate was 800,
yeah,
it will be much lower.
Yeah.
If the exchange rate, on the other hand, is 1,700, then it'll be much more pricey.
So,
yeah.
I know you want to stay away from the politics of it. Now, this is sounding like politics at play, influencing the price of petrol in Nigeria. Now, you don't even have to agree, but that's what it's looking like at this point, if Nigerians are also having to buy at the international market rate. Because I feel like there has to be a concession.
That was why we were subsidizing for quite a long period of time. There's nothing wrong with subsidies, and let's be extremely clear. We didn't manage it right. It was fraught with theft, and that was why they stopped it, because they could no longer afford it. So what were
they couldn't prosecute corruption, so they make the Nigerians pay the consequences of their inability to prosecute corruption. All right, so Lagos, you can see we're trying to give language to the madness and why we're paying over 1,000 naira on petrol. Petrol is still 1,100 naira in Lagos.
In Lagos, it's about 1,025 NNPC. Other locations, about 1,090.
Okay. All right, good. We're going to quickly go on a break for the news update. When we come back, yes, there's a little bit about the petrol conversation we'll still have, and then CNG. Jide has a case in favor. I have an opinion against. So let's see how that plays out. We'll be right back on Nigeria Info.
Where Nigerians come first for the best of talk.
My wife beats me like you beat, I don't know, maybe an animal.
A category of females, adolescents, that should not be giving birth are in fact being forced to give birth. Not even once, but multiple times.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
It's 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
The news update on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Lagos, here are the updates this hour. Nigeria's National Food and Drug Agency has uncovered an illegal site for producing counterfeit alcoholic beverages on Ofin Road, Balogun, Lagos Island. The agency revealed that the operation was exposed while acting on a complaint. A shop was found to have been repurposed for producing and packaging fake alcoholic drinks on Lagos Island. Meanwhile, former Anambra State Governor Peter Obi has urged President Bola Tinubu's administration to involve citizens in a national debate before passing the tax reform bills into law. The Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 election stated that while the bills are essential for the country's development, they must undergo robust public deliberation before final decisions are made. Obi emphasized that tax reform is critical but should be subject to informed public discourse. The founder of the Kuka Center, Bishop Matthew Kuka, believes the controversial tax reform bills proposed by Bola Tinubu's administration could curtail the elite's financial recklessness. Bishop Kuka advised the federal government to ensure the reforms drive national development. He stressed the need for effective communication to address citizens' concerns, particularly as many face severe poverty. He urged the government to adopt a constructive engagement strategy to convince Nigerians that there is hope for the future and encourage patience during this period. Away from that, the Nigeria Sex Workers Association has called on law enforcement agencies to protect its members nationwide from harassment and abuse. In a statement issued by its national coordinator, Amaka Enemo, the association highlighted a disturbing rise in reports of physical assaults, harassment, and extortion of sex workers by clients and law enforcement officials. Enemo appealed to the authorities to recognize the humanity of sex workers and shield them from violence and abuse. And on the foreign scene, Vietnamese property tycoon Trong My Lan has lost her appeal against the death sentence for masterminding the world's largest bank fraud. The 68-year-old is now in a race to save her life, as Vietnamese law allows a commutation to life imprisonment if she repays 75% of the embezzled funds. On Tuesday, the court ruled there was no basis to reduce her death sentence. Trong is one of the few women in Vietnam sentenced to death for a white-collar crime. Lagos, that's the news updates this hour. You're listening to The Sunny Side with Joyce on 99.3 Nigeria Info, and I am Yvonne Ohaifo. Thank you for your time.
If news is your quest, or gist your request, well, somewhere over your rainbows.
Over your rainbow!
Is the Sunny Side.
They better know it!
With Joyce.
Let's talk.
And we're back, 99.3 Nigeria Info. Welcome. You're on the Sunny Side. My name's Joyce, and we have with us in the studio in person all five what are you? 6 what are you? You're 6 what? 4?
6'1".
6'1". Yeah. You're just a lanky guy. All right. So Jide Pratt with us in the studio, trying to help bring some clarity to the now new development we have, which is around the Port Harcourt refinery and whether it's working. So once again, there are too many allegations in favor, others against the extent to which the refinery is operational. And so, Tunde, you listed, according to what the NNPC reports, to be the byproducts of the crude refining that the NNPC at this moment has been capable of extracting. And my question is, are they also selling? Because now we don't know if they're loading, they're not loading petrol. So now that they said, you agree that they're refining to some extent, are they also selling? Is that what's happening?
Ideally, the way refinery works is that every time you refine petroleum products into tanks, you have to sell them.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is that you never want to be what you call top of tank.
Yeah.
So the job of a refinery is to crack it, refine it, and then sell it.
Okay.
So if you look at what happens in, and I always like to mention Saudi Arabia, Saudi Aramco. They basically extract about 12 to 13 million barrels of crude oil a day. Now, what does the country need or use? It's just about 3 million barrels a day. So what it does mean is that delta is actually refined and it is sold as revenue for Saudi Aramco. Now, there's something called the crack spread And that's how you make money from a refinery. If you buy $1 million worth of crude and you're able to sell distillates, and we've talked about the different things that come out, worth 1.5, then that crack spread is the $500,000 differential.
Okay.
So it means to say that if you get your act together, you can actually make money from selling distillates.
Okay.
And NNPC ideally should be selling the PMS, should be selling the AGO, should be selling they have fuel oil, and they should also be selling kerosene.
So liquefied petroleum gas, low pour fuel oil, automotive gas oil, kerosene, straight run gasoline, naphtha, blended into 1.4 million liters of premium motor spirit. So if they're not selling petrol, the assumption is they're probably not refining. If they're not refining, then they're not selling these.
Logical point, but don't forget you can refine into a tank. So let's be clear. If I decide to refine into a tank, what am I trying to do? I'm keeping the stock, but I'm avoiding top of tank. So if I have a tank, and Joyce, let's be clear about this. If I have a tank that is 140 million liters, I can decide to hold stock. But what I must not do is that as I refine daily, I must make sure that I don't spill over. That's what you call top of tank. And then in that case, that's another issue. Now, NNPC today, refinery Port Harcourt, like we said, they said they were calibrating. So, but it doesn't mean that they cannot refine into that tank and store that straight cut naphtha. Don't forget, they're still pushing it to element petrochemicals anyway.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's
I
mean, you're making sense. It's just we don't have a foot on the ground. So marketers are saying, well, the 1,013 naira is they're not agreeing to pay. I mean, now that you have a Dangote who's given it 970, any final developments or recent developments as to marketers and their back and forth against the Port Harcourt refinery?
No, so I mean, like I said, I believe is it Petroan? I believe it was Petroan who made a statement yesterday saying that they're buying from the Port Harcourt refinery.
Oh.
And that they're taking trucks, but they were waiting for loading. I believe it was Petroan. So, and it goes back to what we're saying. If the commercials work for you in Port Harcourt, you would load from Port Harcourt. If the commercials work from you from the Dangote and you transport it down, you'd also go ahead and do that. The question is that this conversation around they're calibrating. Sadly, there's nobody that can say it is or it isn't because.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
At this point, I think we'll just cling to it isn't. We have look. Otherwise, we're in limbo. We'll rather just cling to it isn't until they come back and say we're done with calibrate. So the funny, why would they disrespect us and then tell us, oh, there's a refinery up and running? Only to come less than 1 week later and say, we'll just step back a little bit. It sounds like if you had a girlfriend and she came up with 2 stories in 1 week.
The basic thing is this. When it comes to an NPC, Nigerians have operated in the case of, do we have a choice? But I tell people every day, the answer is yes, we do now. I personally, if I had to buy commercially from the NNPC and have this on and offs, I'd focus my attention on someone who is either importing or the Dangote refinery. Because what I want in my business is consistency. I don't want to start on Monday. Then you wake up on Tuesday, hey, I need to recalibrate. So what happens on Wednesday if you need to paint the tanks? What is going to happen? Yeah. There just seems to be no method to the, excuse my French, madness when it comes to how...
Yeah, it's really what it is. Someone is asking about this Malta. Yeah. Some time ago, Dangote accused some Nigerians of owning a blending plant at Malta. Could you call that a refinery?
No, it's what it was in the statement. It was a blending plant. But then again, blending is not illegal if it meets test standards. So what might be happening there might be a convergence of straight cut naphtha and gasoline, mixing it and then going through the test. In my opinion, I think what will come out, and I'm not a chemical engineer, but in my opinion, what will come out from the full refining process might be better and will be better in terms of the age of the refinery, the Nelson complexity, and I mean the fact that it's so, how do I put it? It's so advanced. Why would I go the blending option? The blending option would be to try and say, I want to bring in this cost, this petrol at a cheaper price to be able to compete.
In terms of quality, Dangote appeared to have given Nigerians gold or a gold standard of a sort. When you hear the mixing of, naphtha with petrol, and then you know what Dangote had laid claims to as far as the quality of his petrol.
There's no doubt about that. And why do I say this? I've looked at samples. I've had samples run from the Dangote refinery. The Nelson index of that refinery is really high, and that's in terms of complexity. It's a brand new refinery. It's a refinery that, when it comes to refine, you can't beat that product right now if you're in Nigeria. There's no, I keep on saying this, I don't work for these guys, but hey, it is what it is.
Okay, so I think it answers the second question here. Can you say that Dangote Refinery is doing blending if you say it is a process in the refining?
There's part of blending, like we said. And when we talked about the fact that you separate, you convert, after you convert, you're going to have to do some... it's blending, basically, what it is. So what it is that you're trying to... So if, for instance, you have straight cut naphtha, you have something called a fluid catalytic cracker. So it's just like saying you're applying more heat to take out more impurities, but you're doing it in a tank.
Okay.
And you're now adding parts so that you can push it to your gasoline tank. And now say this is fit for market. Okay. So that is part of the refining process. There's no how they will get petrol out without
blending.
There's no how.
Okay, all right. So Joyce, your guest talk about, I think you've spoken about this like 4 times already, but I guess maybe it features again in this conversation for necessary reasons. Let your guest talk about 425,000 barrels per day giving for local refining. Is NNPC selling that too? Can't NNPC give it to Dangote to refine, and NNPC pay for the refining alone? That's if we don't have a working refinery. We shouldn't be buying fuel at the rates we're buying it now. Crude is allocated daily for refining. And this is Sid Moses.
So Sid Moses makes a very good point. And there's what is called the domestic crude supply obligation. So it's an obligation because basically it's a law. So what is it trying to say? It's trying to say that as a crude oil producing country, you must make room for local refining. Now, when we had zero refining capacity, what happened was that there was something called the DSDP, direct sales, direct purchase. So it was a swap. The government will allocate that and it's actually 445,000 barrels.
Okay.
Would allocate that 445,000 barrels